Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.
You're watching Conversations with Jennylyn, and today I have a beautiful woman to share with you from Trinidad and Tobago, and her name is Hema Ramkission. She's a corporate communications, television business host, and much more. And she can tell us more about the rest as we continue with this conversation. Hema, thank you so much for joining me on Conversations with Jennylyn.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Thank you. I do appreciate the opportunity, the platform, and a special good afternoon to all of your audience as well.
Thank you. So you are no stranger to television, so this is probably going to be one of my easiest conversations because you are seasoned, as we say. So I decided to do this Black Lives Matter series in parallel with the COVID-19 series that I've been doing since I think April or May. Mm-hmm. And I was asked to do it because of everything that's going on in the world now. And so I thought, since I'm a Black woman, why not? So you live in a country where it's predominantly Black people. So maybe you can tell us, what you have observed over the years as some of the problems that this is causing.
When the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think it started a couple of years ago in the US, but I feel as though because of social media and now the information age, the pain and the atrocities that were exposed in the US were easily translated, and the message came to the diaspora in the Caribbean. And inequality is something we can all relate to. And in the Caribbean, in Trinidad and Tobago in particular, protest action started. The message was carried not just in protests outside the US Embassy, but I felt as though a lot of people could relate. And those who couldn't directly relate, it was a time to empathize and a time to lend your voice and support, because it would be ignorant of me to say that racism does not exist, even here in the Caribbean. It would be ignorant of me to say that classism does not exist. It would be ignorant of me to say that we all have equal opportunities, because we don't. And there are many communities that have been underserved. There are many communities that face racial stereotyping by, whether it be corporate, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be opportunities for schools, so certain types of jobs. It's just a conversation about oppression and inequality. It may not be, there are threads which connect the struggle in the US to what we have here. But I think our call is for equality, and those who are not of Afro-Trinidadian descent, it was a moment of learning and a moment of understanding and a moment to empathize and lend your voice, because inequality and racism has no place in societies like ours, which is so diverse. I mean, we are as culturally complex as our food. There are groups, we are predominantly a migrant population. You have different descendants coming to make our country. So it's always a combustible situation when people feel as though they are not being given an equal opportunity. So it was a tipping point and a learning point for Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, how do you define racism?
I look, as I said, it was a conversation that even I had to learn about, because I have a very good friend of mine who's very active in the Black Lives Matter movement locally. And I remember calling her, and she said to me that, Hema, you need to lend your voice because racism is real. And then she gave me her examples. I think it's more of an inherent hate, ignorance, and a lack of opportunities and a lack of equality for persons who may be physically different to you. And when this is someone who is a really good friend of mine, and I remember saying to her, Kez, I don't see race. Like I don't see, because we have grown up together. And she said, well, that's not the correct answer, because it's a learning point for all of us. Because by saying things and just dismissing it, it means that you don't recognize the struggles that other people are going through. So when I look at racism, I can say there is a lot of hatred. It happens around, not maybe to the extent that there's violence, like we don't have hate crimes, but there is oppression, a lack of opportunities, and inequality.
And in Trinidad and Tobago, because yesterday I listened to a TED Talk that was given by someone from Trinidad and Tobago that I'm going to be interviewing very soon, whose parents left, migrated, and when their children were old enough, they brought them back to Trinidad.
Right.
And he talked about going to school, and instead of seeing, black kids and white kids, you saw Chinese, you saw Portuguese, and you saw Indians, you saw blacks. And I know, because I lived in that part of the world, that you never look around your classroom and see that. It's like a classroom of people. And so I think in Trinidad, racism, would you define it, or would you categorize it the way it is here in the US? Because in the US, when you talk about racism, the immediate thought that comes to mind for most people here is people who are very pale skinned versus all the rest of us, like all the rest of us who have pigmentation. But in Trinidad, that's not so true, because it's like you said, it's so diverse.
Yeah. It's not. It really is not. And I feel as though our fight is for equality, but there are several communities which are predominantly Afro-Trinidadian, which have been underserved, which have not gotten the benefit of the development of infrastructure, for the young people to feel as though there's a fighting chance to be part of what is considered to be the elites of society. So, I feel when you say racism, it's not a black versus white issue in Trinidad and Tobago. It's just a fight where Afro-Trinidadians feel they have been not given the opportunities as everyone else.
Yes. So are you of East Indian descent?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Did you ever experience any type of what you would consider to be racism in Trinidad or anywhere?
I feel, when I have never experienced that. I think I can experience a little bit of classism, because, a lot of times there is still a very color conscious society that we have. So, you do have sections of society which feel as though they belong in certain geographic areas or in certain clubs or in certain facilities. So you experience that. And I think almost everyone in Trinidad and Tobago still experience that. They can relate to some extent. And, whether it be some people going into a high-end store and being looked at in a certain way or being judged. I feel as though everyone who is not particularly of a certain skin color can say they've experienced that.
As you were speaking, a funny story came to mind. I was in Beverly Hills with a girlfriend once who's very dark. And she was getting married and she was looking for presents for her bridesmaids. And she went into Tiffany's and they snobbed her. I think they looked at her and thought, what can you afford in this store? So we left. And I can't remember which store we went to. She spent a lot of money and then came back with all her bags to Tiffany. I'll never forget this. I was standing there laughing, and you should have seen their faces when she came back. But I mean, you do experience it. So many people experience it in so many ways. And it's like you say, it's not always about black and white. It could be because you are perceived of a lesser economic standing. So people put you in a lower socioeconomic group, and they feel that that's inferior to them because they live a certain lifestyle. So it comes in many, many different ways. In Trinidad, which would you say is more prevalent?
Because we're so diverse, people experience different things. So I can say, to me, it's classism. In communities which are, disenfranchised or underserved, will see that they experience racism. I have friends who will say that they go to places and they get looks as, what are you doing here? That police would stop them if there's a roadblock because, of the racial profiling. I can't say that I've ever experienced those things, but they are things that happen.
So sad when you think about it. And I was thinking a lot about some of the people that commit the crimes are those people that have been profiled in that way. And I was thinking about what that must be like for them. I think some of them are driven down that path because you get so much rejection, so many blockages. And if you're not very strong, you have a choice in these situations to go either way. And I think sometimes the anger of having to live this less than life or being forced into it causes some of these people to go down that road. I just interviewed your Archbishop on Friday.
Right.
I just love him. He has a very contagious attitude. And if we could all just catch it, the world would be a nicer place to live.
It's true because, when we don't, as utopic as it seems, and some people feel as though it's naive, but if you don't give equality of opportunities and equality of opportunities for education, then you're not giving a population the possibility to advance on an equal playing field. And if everyone is not given an equal chance, there will be resentment, and the resentment comes out in forms of misunderstanding and hate.
Exactly, and anger. Have you ever lived in the U.S.?
No.
Okay. But you visit, right?
I do.
When you visited here, have you ever felt like out of place or uncomfortable in any of the environments that you were circulating in?
No, actually, I've never felt that. I felt a little bit of racism in London when I was there for a little while doing a course, but I've never felt it in the US,
Oh, you felt it in London?
Yeah, I did.
Do you want to share that with us?
It was probably one of those high-end stores, and at that time I was working with an international organization, and I had gone there with one of the vice president's wife, because I was, and she went in, and she was in the changing room, and they were attending to, and I was literally just sitting on the side because, of course, I can't afford anything there. It's one of those really high-end stores. And the security guard and one of the store clerks came up to me and said, "Why are you sitting here so long?" And obviously it was just it only dawned on me that I don't look like the kind of person who would be there. And it just, that was my one experience sort of with that. That was many, many years ago.
Can you believe it? That makes you, because when you go to London or come to the US, especially from Trinidad, and I came from Guyana, it's very intimidating when you first get here. I mean, especially coming from Guyana here, maybe not so much Trinidad, but when I first came here, I just felt inferior to everything, even the leaves on the ground.
Yeah.
Because it's such an overwhelming experience when you move from a third world country to a place like this. So I could just imagine how you felt. Do you ever see it changing? Have you seen it changing for the better?
I do think that we all have to hope that things change for the better, So I feel as though if we don't hope for it, and I have hope in the next generation, because I feel as though, the legacies of colonialism and slavery may still be evident in people who are still in their 60s, who lived in that time of division, 60s and beyond that, when things were very difficult and intermingling and interracial relationships were very difficult. But I feel in the younger generation, as generations come by, things are changing because we're such a melting pot society,
And the thing is, I think our young people are paying more attention. I think when you and I were growing up, I certainly was oblivious to this. Like, it didn't even exist in my reality, because my classroom had different shades of black and light and brown, and we all loved each other because it was a smaller school, and we were like a big family. We never looked at each other as a skin color. But I must tell you that when I moved here to live, I became very conscious of it.
Yeah.
And there were times growing up where I was glad my skin was light.
Yeah.
Because people looking at me could not tell I was black, and I didn't want my skin to be darker because I didn't want to be subjected to some of what I saw darker skinned people being subjected to. Isn't
colorism? Yeah, colorism is still a thing that very much exists in many, many spheres of our society, But
in Trinidad?
Yeah, you do. You have colorism in many aspects, in East Indian population, in the Afro-Trinidadian population. And that became very evident with the whole conversation on Black Lives Matter, where a lot of Black women in particular came out and spoke about, the perceptions of a red woman, which is what we consider, the lighter skin, in Trinidad, colloquial terms, But colorism exists very much prevalent.
Well, as a woman with a microphone in her hand, as you do, you are in a powerful place to start some change.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to do that, and how?
You know, I use my platforms, all of my platforms, whether it be on television, whether it be through media like this, and even through my social media following, because I do have a huge following. I talk about inequality and I tell people to get involved, because ignoring a problem does not make it any better. And if you think you are not affected by this problem, we all are. Because when parts of society feel disenfranchised, society will eventually have cracks and we will all fall through them.
Yeah, because I think that the people that benefit from, this white superiority complex, they are not interested in changing anything. This has served them for many, many years. And I think this is why, instead of diminishing, it has grown, because they feel superior and they act superior, the people who perpetrate these behaviors, and they get the best of all the opportunities. And I do know it breeds resentment amongst those who are deprived because their skin is not the same color. Could you share some of your platforms with us and what they're doing to create some change?
I know, because I know to have a couple minutes again with you before my next call starts. But I used my show, which is a morning television show, when the conversation started, to showcase and to speak not just to the organizers of the protests, but to educate people, from history teachers to history professors to young activists, to talk about the dreams that they had and to talk about what the Trinidad that they dream of and why is it not possible to have that. On my own, as I said, it's a learning time for everyone. I use it as an opportunity to educate myself about race relations and to make sure that I am better able to lend a voice and to be an advocate, to help all of my sisters and brothers, because we are all one people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you so much. I know you said you have another call coming up, and I don't want to abuse the privilege of spending time with you. I hope that you have enjoyed this. I know your message will be well received, and hopefully people will learn something from you to help them change if there's someone stuck in that behavior.
Thank you so much. We will talk soon.
Yes, maybe we'll do another segment when you're another time. Is that okay?
That's perfectly fine.
Okay. Thank you so much for watching Conversations with Jennylyn. When a conversation is all you need to be inspired.